in Southern California in the United States. Astronomer Shrinivas Kulkarni is on his way to Palomar Observatory. He's receiving the Shaw Prize for his contributions to time domain astronomy, which have revolutionized the field.
We are about a few miles away from the observatory at this point. We crossed the 5,000-foot mark, and the observatory itself, I think, is at 5,500 feet. So we will enter shortly the grounds of the observatory. This is the Cleveland National Forest. There's no urban area here, nor even houses, and the observatory was chosen to be away from the cities because of light. And here we'll turn, you can see Palomar State Park and the observatory.
Born and raised in India, Shri received a Master of Physics degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and a PhD in radio astronomy from the University of California, Berkeley, in 1983. He fell in love with astronomy in his teens.
It's an amazing job to get paid to understand how the universe came about.
Shri is a professor of astronomy and planetary science at the California Institute of Technology. Caltech owns and operates the observatory. Palomar Observatory is near San Diego, California. It houses the optical surveys that Shrinivas Kulkarni created. Their groundbreaking discoveries are at the forefront of time domain astronomy. Time domain astronomy is about finding objects in the night sky that change over time, which are known as transients. They're caused by moving asteroids, stars dying, and stars changing in brightness. Astronomers find new transients by taking an old image of the sky and compare it with the new image of the same sky.
This is the old image. Look at the galaxy, there's a star here to give you a reference. New image, galaxy, a star here. But there's a new object here. And that's because that's a supernovae we've discovered.
And astronomers used to look at these images by eye.
You take one image and the other image and you flip back and forth, and the new object will appear like a blink.
Around the year 2005, Shri came up with an idea for a new type of optical survey from observing a Swee diagram. Up until then, most astronomers focused on two types of exploding stars.
One is novae, which is a minor phenomenon on accreting white dwarfs. Other is supernovae. So they call them as supernovae because they are 10,000 times brighter than the novae. I wanted to know, as an explorer, if you look like this, what other things are in this diagram? Okay, it's a very basic question, is what, because the universe is so rich, maybe there are other things. It took me about 2 years to figure out a plan to undertake a very systematic and a powerful search of changes in the night sky at optical wavelengths.
The concept was to systematically survey the night sky and record transients over time. Fast forward to today, the concept is now a system called the Swee Transient Facility, or ZTF, and it uses two telescopes. This dome houses the first telescope. So Shri, what is this facility over here?
Well, this is the 48-inch Schmidt telescope, and it's the first telescope of the Swee Transient Facility. It carries a very large imaging camera, sort of like your iPhone cameras, but much better quality and almost a gigapixel. And this, with this, we survey the sky, the whole northern sky, in about 2 days. That's our main program. And we call this as the discovery engine because you image the sky, you compare the picture tonight with picture taken a year ago or a month ago or a day ago, and see if the new things have popped up. And we can find as many as 500,000 changes in the sky in a night. We can't study all of them. So we rank order them in importance of what we think the science is, and we can select of the order of 10 to 20 So for that, we need a second telescope to go and understand a bit more about these selected objects. And for that, we need to get a spectrum.
Inside this dome is a second telescope with a 60-inch diameter lens. It has a spectral energy distribution machine that measures the unique chemical signature of transients.
And that classifies whether it's an exploding star or novae or something else.
The entire process is automated, and the data from the telescopes is sent to the astronomers at Caltech and partner institutions around the world for verification.
And then when we process it, the data looks something like this, which is a bit more processed form of the data. And then we further apply our cuts. We correct for various things, such as different kinds of moving objects on the sky or different kinds of standard corrections. So this big bump is because of the presence of hydrogen in the explosion site. So from this, we can tell that since there's a lot of hydrogen present, it most likely is the explosion of some kind of a red supergiant star, which has around 10 solar mass of hydrogen present in it.
Shree's optical surveys have discovered tens of thousands more supernovae or exploding stars than the manual blink surveys.
The most productive supernova search was being done by Professor at Berkeley using the Lick Observatory. And they're finding about 100 supernovae in a year, okay, and classifying them. We are finding we have the capacity of about 20 to 30,000 supernovae in a year, and we are classifying 2,000 per year. That's a huge jump.
The Swee transient facility uses artificial intelligence and machine learning. And in October 2023, the system was able to independently recognize a supernova and announce it to the world without a human being involved in the process. Over in Princeton, New Jersey, the chair of the Shaw Prize in Astronomy Selection Committee said that Shree was chosen for the prize because of the impact he's had on time-domain astronomy. With the Swee Transient Facility and its predecessor, Palomar Transient Factory.
Time-domain astronomy is special now partly because the technology has developed rapidly to enable us to be much more effective at finding time-varying events. And one of the remarkable things that Kulkarni has done is to develop an automated system for the ZTF and PTF that's enabled him to transmit new discoveries to the astronomical community at large without human intervention and on a timescale as short as minutes.
Back in Pasadena, California, at the California Institute of Technology.
How repeatable will this arrangement be?
Mansi Kaslawal is also an astrophysics professor. She will be managing ZTF in the new year, and she says the discoveries made by ZTF have been crucial to understanding the fundamentals of life.
One of the questions that all of us think about is, where did we come from, right? And what are the elements, what are the building blocks of life? So when we look around us, we are made up of carbon and oxygen, there's calcium in our teeth. The majority of these elements are synthesized in cosmic explosions. And what ZTF and PTF discover are cosmic explosions.
Roger Smith worked with Shree from the very beginning, and he helped to build the optical surveys.
Shree is quite a visionary and comes up with a lot of new science ideas, and he's very good at seeing where new technologies might enable new science.
Shree calls his philosophy for scientific research opportunistic, because he likes to work on scientific problems that have a good chance of succeeding.
The universe is very rich. It's lived for a long time, produced many things. So with technology, I felt you could go and build a machine and learn new aspect of universe on a timescale of 5 to 10 years.
Well, ZTF has been very successful. Shree is looking forward to a new research project in time-domain astronomy, funded by NASA, to study the sky in the ultraviolet.
But to study ultraviolet, you have to go above space because ultraviolet is absorbed by atmosphere. My main interest in that mission is more to study the matter between stars, what's called interstellar medium.
At home, science is never far from Shree's life. His wife has a PhD in biochemistry. They met while studying at the University of California, Berkeley.
So she was very focused on science and understood the importance of being a scientist. I felt that she would understand why I'm so focused.
Hiromi Komiya understood that Shree's work would take him away from the family.
So I wasn't really surprised about what he had to do, but still, he had no holidays. It was like no weekend, and whatever time he had, he was doing work. And when he was exhausted, he would sleep 3 days in a row. And
His elder daughter, Anju, says the family supports his career so he can do what he loves.
And there's a lot of people who put so much effort so that he could have this career doing what he loves, even though it comes with a lot of sacrifice. And I definitely hope that whatever he does next, he really does sort of in the same spirit, learning more about the world in whatever way that he wants to learn.
One life science and medicine winner discovered a blood gene, which paved the way for a genome editing therapy of sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia, which are blood diseases that affect millions of people worldwide. In Bethesda, Maryland, in the United States. Swee Thein is a hematologist and a medical doctor. She leads the sickle cell branch at the U.S. government's National Institutes of Health.
I'm really very much a physician scientist. My research is patient-driven. I see the patients and I want to address questions to try to help find new therapies.
Today, she is seeing one of her patients, 61-year-old Yao Loko from Ghana. He has the most severe form of sickle cell disease, a genetic blood disorder.
And it causes a very, very painful crisis. Very, very painful. And mine is always start from my hips and then my chest and my knees.
He avoids strenuous activities such as playing football.
You exert yourself so much, and then that is how you go into this mini crisis. So it affected me, and then I was in the hospital most of the time. So it affects you. You get depressed sometimes. You get stressed out.
He would go to the hospital as often as once a month to treat a pain crisis. People get sickle cell disease from inheriting one mutated gene from each of their parents. Hemoglobin is a protein in the red blood cells that is responsible for delivering oxygen to the tissues. The mutations affect the production of hemoglobin. The red cells turn into a sickle shape and stiffen. It cannot flow through the blood vessels properly, stopping blood supply to the tissues, causing pain crises. Swee Thein discovered the gene which a new genome editing therapy uses to treat sickle cell disease. Her quest for the gene began in another country with another blood disease decades earlier. After completing her Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery degrees at the University of Malaya in Malaysia, Swee went to the UK for postgraduate training in internal medicine and hematology. In 1982, she went to Oxford University to research hemoglobin disorders.
I joined the Weatherall Institute of Molecular Medicine to work with Sir David Weatherall. And he kind of said, well, this is going to be your project. Find out why some patients with beta thalassemia have such a mild disease compared to the majority.
Beta thalassemia is an inherited genetic disease characterized by low levels of hemoglobin and severe anemia, and tissues and organs don't get the oxygen they need to work properly. Patients need regular blood transfusions. Fetal hemoglobin is found in fetuses and newborns. About 3 to 6 months after birth, a switch occurs in everyone where the production of fetal hemoglobin decreases and production of adult hemoglobin increases. Adult hemoglobin is produced by the beta hemoglobin gene. Mutations in the beta globin gene cause sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia.
For a long time, the clinicians have known that if patients with sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia can produce high levels of fetal hemoglobin, they have a much milder disease. But it was difficult to figure out why.
Then Swee hunted for the gene regulating the fetal to adult hemoglobin switch. First, she collected blood samples from families with beta thalassemia, including an Indian family.
This spans 7 generations. It even involved a trip out to Malawi to complete as much as possible. So at that time, I could do what we call association analysis within this family. And we found this gene on chromosome 6q.
She found a gene on chromosome 6q which increased fetal hemoglobin and caused mild beta thalassemia in members of the Indian family. But 6q didn't explain the increase in fetal hemoglobin in all families. So Swee hunted for more genes.
People were skeptical that I could actually find this, even including me.
Then Swee collaborated with the director of a twin research unit, and she measured the fetal hemoglobin levels of identical and non-identical twins.
It was so clear that the fetal hemoglobin levels in identical twins were very similar, almost 90%, which then tells me there's a huge genetic component. So I was, felt I can find it.
That twin study provided evidence that she was on the right path and would be able to find the gene that increases production of fetal hemoglobin. Swee had collected blood samples from 5,000 individuals. And she worked with the biostatistician to perform a genome-wide association examination of individuals displaying extreme differences in sickle cell and beta thalassemia traits.
So we took those with fetal hemoglobin levels at the lower 5% and those with levels at a higher, 95% or higher. And we did a scan, a genome scan, using, I think, 300 markers at that time.
Swee found 3 genes that affects the production of fetal hemoglobin. Beta globin, which was known already, the gene on chromosome 6q, which Swee found in the Indian family, and a brand new gene, BCL11A. In 2007, Swee published a paper that concluded the BCL11A gene on chromosome 2p15 is a major regulator of fetal hemoglobin production. Subsequent research by the Shaw Prize Life Science and Medicine co-winner Stuart Orkin discovered that BCL11A repressed the production of fetal hemoglobin.
And this is the area now that is being targeted in gene editing for disabling BCL11A so that it can enable the fetal hemoglobin production to continue in adult life.
The gene therapy stops BCL11A from repressing the production of fetal hemoglobin, so fetal hemoglobin can be produced. The normal fetal hemoglobin compensates for the mutations in the adult hemoglobin, which cause sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. The therapy can potentially cure people with those blood diseases. In December 2023, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the first CRISPR gene editing treatment for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia, based on the groundwork of Swee Thein's and Stuart Orkin's findings.
It is a landmark in molecular medicine.
In 2015, Swee relocated to the United States and joined the NIH as the first chief of the newly established sickle cell branch at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute.
Morning, Rick.
The scientific director of the institute says Swee is a special type of scientist.
She's really one of a dying breed of physician scientists, somebody that is an exceptional clinician, truly cares about patients. She's made many important discoveries that have led to new, important, and helpful therapeutics.
William Eaton collaborates with Swee on improving the lives of patients with sickle cell disease.
She has this passion for research and this passion for helping sickle cell patients that is an inspiration to me and to everyone who works with her.
Kong works in Swee lab. She's taught him to be a better scientist.
As a scientist, she is curious and open-minded, energetic, and also she possesses creative thinking. And as a mentor, she is exemplary and visionary.
Well, Swee is excited that BCL11A is used in a new genome editing therapy for sickle cell disease. Many of her patients won't qualify for the treatment because they have too much organ damage. So she continues to search for oral drugs that will alleviate the suffering of her patients.
One of the things that the patients always tell me is that when they get a pain, they know when a certain pain is going to blow up into a full crisis. So I'm still trying to find a medication that they can take to stop this in its tracks before it blows up.
When Swee is not at work, she likes to take walks around her Washington, D.C. neighborhood to pick up free books to read from a book box.
The color of air. So, nothing of interest today. Oh, I love reading. I mean, you know, I'm a bit of a hoarder of the books now.
Swee's love of books and learning began at a young age. She was born and raised in Malaysia, the seventh child in a family of 9 children.
She paid a lot of attention to study, education. She's the smartest in the family during that time, and she is very focused.
And her advice for the next generation of scientists?
To be prepared to keep learning all your life, actually. I mean, keep an open mindset. Sometimes it helps you think outside the box.
We're in Boston, Massachusetts to meet with one of the co-winners of the Life Science and Medicine Award. Stuart Orkin is receiving the Shaw Prize for creating a revolutionary gene editing therapy for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia, which are devastating blood diseases that affect millions of people worldwide. Born and raised in New York, Stuart Orkin attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for a bachelor's in science degree. A course sparked his interest in the emerging field of molecular biology.
There were problems to solve, and you know, how does a cell work? How do you express a gene? How do you make a protein? All these things at the time were almost completely unknown. One could feel that you're in sort of an exciting area where there would be discoveries, breakthroughs.
His studies led him to Harvard Medical School for a degree in medicine. After training at the Boston Children's Hospital and the National Institutes of Health, Stuart returned to the Boston Children's Hospital and eventually set up his own lab with a joint appointment at the Harvard Medical School. He always had an interest in studying red blood cells.
At the time I began, that was an area that was sort of the testing ground for molecular biology.
He chose to work on a problem which could potentially help millions of people. Fetal hemoglobin, a protein in red blood cells, is found in fetuses and newborns. About 3 to 6 months after birth, a switch occurs in everyone, where the production of fetal hemoglobin decreases and production of adult hemoglobin increases. Adult hemoglobin is produced by the beta hemoglobin gene. Mutations in the beta globin gene cause sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. Individuals get sickle cell disease from inheriting one mutated gene from each of their parents.
Sickle cell disease is a disease that affects the red blood cell, and the red blood cell is a round cell, as shown here, carries hemoglobin, which brings oxygen to all tissues of the body. As they begin to sickle, they plug up these small vessels, and then when they're fully sickled, they actually block the vessels, and this leads to tissue damage and pain, the pain crisis of sickle cell disease. Pain crises, which are debilitating and often prevent these patients, when they become adults, prevents them from working, prevents them from having, a normal life, and disrupts the whole family, environment.
Beta thalassemia is an inherited genetic disease, characterized by low levels of beta hemoglobin, or no beta hemoglobin, and severe anemia. And tissues and organs don't get the oxygen they need to work properly. Patients need regular blood transfusions.
Blood transfusions eventually lead to what's called iron overload, because there's iron in each transfusion you receive, and that causes damage to many different organs of the body, including the heart.
The key to finding a therapy for beta thalassemia and sickle cell disease was in the fetal to adult hemoglobin switch.
It was known from clinical investigation, family studies, that if one has more fetal hemoglobin than normal as an adult, if you also had sickle cell anemia or beta thalassemia, and you had less severe disease.
He and his team hunted for the gene that caused the fetal to adult hemoglobin switch.
We had a couple of theories to test, a couple of hypotheses, and over the next couple of years we tested those and they failed. In other words, we had been unable to learn anything about how fetal hemoglobin was regulated.
Then a breakthrough came in 2007, when a group of researchers led by Antonio Cao used a genome-wide association study and discovered that the gene BCL11A was related to fetal hemoglobin, affecting people in Sardinia. Stuart's lab helped confirm the result. Months earlier, Shaw Prize Life Science and Medicine co-winner Swee Thein had published a paper showing that the BCL11A gene on chromosome 2p15 was associated with fetal hemoglobin. Stuart dived deeper into the relationship between BCL11A and fetal hemoglobin.
When we did that experiment, when we reduced the level of BCL11A, the level of fetal hemoglobin went up, which suggested that BCL11A was a repressor or a brake on fetal hemoglobin.
In another crucial experiment, his team took away BCL11A from the red cells of mice engineered with sickle cell disease.
And what we found was if we took BCL11A away, sickle cell disease was vanished.
Next, he used a novel genome editing technology called CRISPR to edit BCL11A.
The CRISPR comes in, and one can think of it as scissors or tweezers that cut the DNA at a particular place. The DNA is then repaired, and the BCL11A gene is now modified. It's expressed at a lower level, which then turns back fetal hemoglobin production on and is beneficial in both sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia.
The gene therapy stops BCL11A from repressing the production of fetal hemoglobin, so fetal hemoglobin can be produced. The increased fetal hemoglobin compensates for the mutations in the adult hemoglobin, which cause sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia. The therapy can potentially cure people with those blood diseases. And in December 2023, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved the first CRISPR gene editing treatment for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia, based on the groundwork of Shaw Prize laureates Stuart Orkin and Swee Thein's findings.
It's enormously gratifying to see this come to an approved therapy.
The first approved therapy using CRISPR was a momentous achievement in science.
So it's very encouraging for a lot of other scientists in the field. And they have confidence that CRISPR can succeed in an actual patient. So not only is the impact for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia patients so important, but also as an inspiration for other disease therapies. We know that CRISPR can work in people.
Yeah, he'll do fine.
Daniel trained in Stuart's lab when many of the pivotal discoveries related to BCL11A were made.
He's just like, in a way, the preeminent hematologist of the last generation who's made a huge contribution to our understanding of the blood system.
Malu is from Shandong Province, China. He enjoys working in Stuart's lab.
He's a very nice person and give the postdoctor freedom to pursue their interest, and you can design your experiment by yourself, and it's very important for research.
David Nathan used to lead the Boston Children's Hospital's hematology unit. He saw the potential in Stuart when he was an intern in the 1970s and convinced him to join the hospital.
He was so good that I truncated his fellowship completely. He did very little clinical training. He went right into the laboratory in about 3 or 4 months. And he's been in the laboratory ever since, and he's made one magnificent contribution after another. I'm very proud of him.
Stuart is thrilled that a genetic therapy for sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia has been created based on his research. But the therapy is expensive and complicated. He is working on developing drugs to turn fetal hemoglobin back on, which is a therapy that would be more accessible to the millions of people with sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia around the world.
That if one understands the mechanism and understands the protein involved, that is BCL11A, we can, with modern technology, develop small molecules that will become drugs eventually.
Outside of the office, science is still a big part of Stuart's life.
I think they're downstairs.
His wife is a fellow scientist, and his daughter is a nurse.
His love of learning influenced his parenting, because that was kind of like the #1 value in our home, was education and learning.
His family is very proud that he's won the Shaw Prize for his discoveries in treating sickle cell disease and beta thalassemia.
It is one of the wonderful ways to show that his peers recognize the importance of the work that he's really spent his life doing. So we're delighted.
While a career in scientific research is often filled with failure and only occasional success, Stuart advises young scientists to be patient and persistent.
Many of us are problem solvers. We want to take a problem, even any problem, and figure out the answer. I want to do the crossword puzzle, figure out the answer. I think it's much the same. We're excited by discovery, finding out new things, and then seeing what that brings as the next opportunity.
We're in Princeton, New Jersey to meet with Peter Sarnak. He's a specialist in number theory and winner of the Mathematical Sciences Award. He's receiving the Shaw Prize for his arithmetic theory of thin groups and the development of the affine sieve.
Every morning, mathematician Peter Sarnak likes to go for a walk in the neighborhood. It's a part of his exercise routine.
In the last 20, 30 years, I try to swim every day. Firstly, I find that it helps me think clearly. I like to think it's healthy. I don't swim that long, but by swimming, as long as you think it's good, it's good. So it puts me in a better mood also.
After the swim, Peter goes to Princeton University to work on mathematics. He fell in love with the subject during his undergraduate days.
And the minute I saw the kind of problems that people attack, how they attack them, how they think about them, how beautiful proofs can be, how imaginative an idea can come from out of left field, I was, let's say, smitten, and I've never really looked back.
He received a bachelor's degree in mathematics at the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, and went to Stanford University for graduate school to study with the mathematician Paul Cohen.
He solved the first of Hilbert's problems that were posed in 1900, completely revolutionizing set theory, an absolute genius. And I'd heard that he was somebody who was still extremely exciting and active, and was encouraged to go work with him. I got there, he was a very competitive guy, but a very inspiring person. He had no field, he was just trying to attack the hardest problems.
Like his mentor, Peter is an expert in many mathematical fields, including number theory. And the study of the distribution of prime numbers is a core topic in number theory. A prime number is divisible by 1 and the number itself. Almost primes and sieve methods are the foundations of Peter's work. A sieve is a procedure to count prime numbers. A simple sieve comes from the Greeks.
The first number on the list, which is 2. This is what the process of the sieve, the first step in a sieve is. I strike out all the numbers which are multiples of 2. So I start off with 2 and I strike out 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then I see that 3 has been omitted, and that's my next prime number, 3. And I now do the same thing. I strike out all multiples of 3. So 3 times 2 is 6. Now I go back to the beginning. So I've got 2 and 3, and the first number that I don't see is 5. That's the next prime. Now I strike out the multiples of 5. So it's 5 times 2 is 10. So this process of striking out the numbers leaves you with the primes. And I think that's where the term sieve comes from, that you sieve by striking out what's left over after you've done the sieve are the prime numbers.
The sieve method can be applied in Apollonian circle packings, a type of geometry. Apollonius was a Greek mathematician who worked with circles. And it all begins with the Apollonius theorem.
So R is the radius, and I won't use the radius much. 1 over R, 1 over the radius, 1 over the radius, is a new name. It's called the curvature. And these 3 circles are tangent, mutually tangent. They touch exactly at one point like that. Then his theorem says there are exactly 2 circles in the world that are tangent to all 3. Yeah, that's a lovely theorem of Apollonius.
If we use Apollonius' theorem to continue filling in new circles or packing new circles, that's an Apollonian circle packing.
So I start off with some arrangement of circles where the curvatures are whole numbers. So I want whole numbers. If I want to look for prime numbers, it's about whole numbers. Number theory is about whole numbers.
Soddy, a chemist, observed that.
We start with the 4 circles. If their curvatures are whole numbers, then forever all the other curvatures are whole numbers.
Researchers from Bell Labs raised many interesting questions related to the number theory of circle packings,
including which integers occur here, which are they prime numbers. And once I learned of their work, and Gumbard and myself had already developed the rudiments of the affine sieve and various other tools that we had worked on, we could answer many, many of their questions. And I was able to prove there are infinitely many circles in any Apollonian packing which are prime numbers. So you can see here a few of them, and you keep on going, the circles get very, very small and the curvatures get very, very big. And you will find, it's a theorem, that there are infinitely many which are prime.
Descartes' equation shows a relation between the curvatures of 4 mutually tangent circles.
So the question is, if I have 4 mutually tangent circles with curvatures x1, x2, x3, x4, is there some relation between these numbers?
And this is Descartes' equation.
So this is the master equation which the 4 must satisfy. And this is also the equation from which you learn that if you start off with 4 which are whole numbers, then forever you will get whole numbers. And you produce the new solutions from the old solutions by flipping, as I was filling in the holes. That flipping in operation, when you do it on these coordinates, is an affine motion. That's where the word affine comes from.
Each time Descartes' equation is used to get a new set of curvatures, that's an affine motion.
The sieve part of this is, remember when we started out with the sieve, we said we do some complicated inclusion, exclusion. So now we have to do striking out, putting back with these moves, with these formulae of affine transformations, which is entirely new. A thin group is a subgroup where you are only getting a few of the transformations, not all the moves. So you are handicapped in what you can do. And to do something with thin groups is what the new feature was. Each step here is fundamentally new, so one has to invent new tools. And we were able to do that together with many people.
The Apollonian circle packing is the simplest example of Peter's theory. The invention of the affine linear sieve and the theory of thin groups are the reasons why Peter Sarnak is receiving the Shaw Prize in Mathematical Sciences. The theory was developed in collaboration with Alex Gumbard and Jean Breguin. How can thin groups and the affine sieve be used in real life?
There's quantum computing where it is actually used to make optimal golden gates and to make fast circuits in quantum computation.
His original and deep vision has launched a vast research program that brings together number theory, combinatorics, analysis, dynamics, geometry, and spectral theory.
So many of those applications are someone taking a particular instance of the affine sieve, analyzing it in greater detail. There's extra ingredients involved that you can make use of to get more information out of that setting to prove a particular application.
When Peter is not developing new math, he likes to help his graduate students on their areas of expertise.
And there's nothing more pleasurable than watching problems be solved. Of course, it's even more pleasurable if you played a critical role in the student solving the problem.
And his graduate students like working with him too.
The main thing that jumps out at you is his enthusiasm. So when I first met him, I was trying to choose who would be my advisor and which university to go to. And he met me for like 45 minutes, and he asked me what I was interested in, and then for the next like 40 minutes, he was just telling me all of the interesting things that I could do with it.
Hey, how are you? Hi. How's it going?
Peter's daughter is on the Princeton campus to work on a musical. She is a songwriter and has a flair for math, just like her father.
My dad, I think, led by example. He was so passionate and is so passionate about his work. So he never was punitive or said, you better get straight A's, but it was inspiring because you want to do as well as he has done, but in your own field.
Back home, Peter and his wife enjoy barbecue dinners. Helen is a professor of information science. She's thrilled that her husband is receiving the Shaw Prize.
I felt so overjoyed that he was recognized for this, for just, being a mathematician, representing the field so well, loving the work that he does, having so many students that he has helped through their careers.
And Peter's motivation for working on great math?
If you want to be a mathematician, research mathematician, you must be willing to be frustrated 99% of the time because you're stuck. If you're not stuck, you're trying to do something that's too easy, and that gives you no satisfaction. Your reward is once in every few years where you have a marvelous idea, and then the high is so high it'll carry you for another 10 years. So I do have some things that I'm hoping to have a few more highs.